Okay, today we are unpacking an absolutely fascinating and frankly highly unconventional startup pitch. We're looking at a proposal that attempts to mash up two completely different worlds, high-stakes Silicon Valley venture capital and geopolitical regime change. The author of these documents is pitching a concept they're calling Liber8, which initially targets the Iranian diaspora. Now, for this explainer, we are going to examine this purely as an objective business and strategic proposal. We're going to look exactly at how the author structures this incredibly audacious idea. So let's dive right in. Here is the roadmap for how we'll break down the pitch today. We'll start with the DemocracyTech vision, then look at the geopolitical window they're targeting, open up the Liber8 platform itself, examine their financial playbook, and finish up with a call to action. All right, starting us off with Section 1, the DemocracyTech vision. So, according to the source material, DemocracyTech is positioned as a brand new tech category. The author defines it as a purpose-built platform that basically combines the massive scale of a social network with advanced AI tools, civic education modules, and highly secure coordination features. And the stated goal here isn't just to connect people, right? It's to actively accelerate democratic transitions. The author argues that a modern democracy movement needs tools that are way more sophisticated than standard political campaigning software. Essentially, they're treating regime change as a complex engineering and startup challenge. The core argument of the pitch draws a really sharp line between traditional activism and what they call democracy tech organizing. They argue that simply showing up for protests, while incredibly brave, often leads to fragmented efforts. Instead, this pitch advocates for pulling those fragmented street protests under one massive tech-enabled umbrella organization. This means moving beyond street marches and into secure digital networks bound by what the author calls a common minimum program, which they simply define as human rights and democracy. It's all about structuring raw passion into a unified, organized force. Moving right along to Section 2, the geopolitical window, or the why now of the pitch. The pitch sets the stage by asking potential investors to imagine resetting the clock to a very specific, calculated date, February 28, 2026. In the author's hypothetical context, this date represents a moment right after major geopolitical strikes that leave the targeted regime at its absolute weakest. The author outlines a scenario where a pending peace deal regarding the Strait of Hormuz creates this fleeting, really fragile window of opportunity. The whole argument here is that this brief diplomatic breathing room has to be immediately filled by a highly organized diaspora before the regime can consolidate its power again. To actually capitalize on that window, the pitch outlines a strict chronological roadmap. And this is crucial. They aren't just pitching chaos, they are proposing a highly structured sequence. Step 1, a regime collapse occurring over a period of months, immediately followed by the establishment of an interim democratic government. Only after this stabilized interim period would the country move to elections for a constituent assembly, which is a process that would take years. The author insists this specific ordered pathway is absolutely essential to transition from a dictatorship to a legitimate representative system without fracturing the whole movement. Okay, let's open up the hood in Section 3, inside the Liber8 platform. First things first, any good pitch deck has to talk about the TAM, the total addressable market, basically the total pool of potential users. The pitch identifies an initial target user base of 4 to 6 million people, specifically the Iranian diaspora. From a venture capital perspective, the author points out that this is a highly educated, affluent demographic with aggregate wealth estimated in the trillions, living in major hubs across the US, Canada, and Europe. They're pitching this as a high-passion, high-wealth user base that is just waiting to be mobilized. Now, looking at the proposed feature set, it starts out kind of like a standard privacy app, encrypted groups and secure communications to bypass censorship. Then it layers in Web3 and AI concepts, personal AI agents to simulate policy debates, and decentralized mesh networks. But then, the pitch takes a massive leap. The author explicitly proposes integration with defense companies like Anduril to use surveillance drones to provide overwatch and security for protesters on the ground. No joke. It is a wildly expansive technical vision that completely blurs the line between a civic app and military coordination. But the pitch doesn't stop at just one country. To justify massive venture scale, the platform has to expand. While the initial use case for diaspora activists focuses heavily on anti-surveillance and regime change coordination, the platform is designed to pivot. Once it's proven, the pitch claims the tech can be customized for established but struggling democracies.
The author specifically names South Africa as the next major market, shifting the feature set more towards civic education, anti-corruption transparency, and AI-assisted governance for everyday global citizens.
Which brings us to the money. Section 4, the financial playbook. So how exactly does the democracy movement monetize? That is the billion-dollar question any Silicon Valley investor is going to ask right out of the gate. Because it's one thing to build a cool organizing tool, it is entirely another to promise venture-scale returns on a politically charged, geopolitical platform. Let's see how the author attempts to solve this equation. The pitch outlines 4 wildly aggressive revenue streams. First up, diaspora monetization, which means tapping into that affluent user base through premium features and high-margin donations. Second, and definitely the most radical, defense deals. Yes, the author proposes facilitating $100 million tech pledges between defense contractors and a government in waiting. Third is a much more traditional enterprise SaaS model, selling the organizing software to NGOs globally. And finally, massive sponsorships. The author explicitly notes a plan to ask high-net-worth individuals, specifically naming Elon Musk, for a $100 million sponsorship to customize the platform for South Africa. To get this whole operation off the ground, the author lays out their initial seed funding ask. They are looking for $10 million at a $100 million valuation. Make no mistake, they are positioning this not as a charity, but as a unicorn-track tech startup. They're demanding a valuation that's right in line with top-tier artificial intelligence and defense tech seed rounds. And they project an incredibly ambitious 10-year trajectory to match. Step 1, the first 2 years, focuses entirely on dominating the Iranian diaspora to reach a $1 billion valuation. Step 2, years 3 through 5, is all about expanding to other causes and locking in those massive defense deals to cross the $10 billion mark. By Step 3, they project becoming a global platform, and by Step 4, years 9 and 10, the pitch claims Liber8 will become the AWS for democracy, the foundational infrastructure for global civic engagement, aiming for a massive $100 billion market cap. I mean, just think about what that means for a second. Privately funded, venture-backed tech infrastructure becoming the foundation for how global citizens overthrow dictators and run their countries. Finally, we hit Section 5, the call to action. Who exactly are they pitching to? Well, the source material is very public about its targets. The primary focus of the pitch is Shervin Pishevar, a really prominent Iranian-American venture capitalist, known for early investments in giants like Uber and Airbnb. But the author also directly tags and solicits tech billionaires like Elon Musk, Mark Andreessen, and Vinod Khosla, right alongside key Iranian political opposition figures like Reza Pahlavi and Masih Alinejad. Basically, the author is attempting to build a syndicate of massive wealth, tech expertise, and political legitimacy, all sitting in the exact same room. I want to leave you with this final thought, pulled directly from the pitch deck itself. Quote, "This plan positions Liber8 as a high-impact, high-return venture. It leverages real passion and wealth as rocket fuel." Whether you view this proposal as a visionary leap in geopolitical technology or an incredibly controversial commodification of a revolution, it undeniably represents a fascinating intersection of Silicon Valley ambition and global politics. It really begs the question, in the 21st century, will the next major democratic transition actually be funded by a venture capital seed round? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning how the world is being built around us.